If you're an independent practice owner, chances are that you're not maximizing the potential of your optical. Do you ever find yourself wondering how big box retailers find success in multiple pair sales, while many independents struggle to sell the first pair? You're not alone, and that's exactly what we're diving into today. In this episode, I'm joined by an expert in optical sales to explore proven strategies that will help you boost multiple pair sales in your practice. We'll be uncovering the small shifts that make a big difference in how you approach patient conversations, overcome objections, and create value. Whether you're looking to grow your revenue, enhance patient satisfaction, or simply optimize the potential of your optical, this episode is packed with actionable insights that you can start using right away. So stick around, you won't want to miss this. Hi, welcome to another episode of I Own a Business, where we focus on helping practice owners grow the practice of their dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Steve Argo, and I have with me today Johann, and I know I'm going to mess this up.
That's okay.
Let me know how to Von Zyl. I think I
That's
got
good.
it. Close
You
enough.
got it.
All right.
Yeah, you got it.
So we got the last name out of the way. Let's go. We'll just use the first name, Johann, who is the business development manager at the largest independent lens manufacturer in the world, Younger Optics. So Johann, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm looking forward to this. This is my first one, so hopefully I won't mess it up,
You can't mess it up. You can't mess it up. It's just two guys talking about optical stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, before we jump in, maybe just tell us a little bit about you and your role with Younger Optics.
Okay, so I've been in the optical industry for it gives my age away, about 28 years. My role at Younger is I do business development management. So it entails looking after key accounts. Like IDOC, for instance, is one of the groups that I look after. So, and also looking at new opportunities for us as a company. So the traditional bottom-up selling has changed a lot in the industry, with a lot of the consolidation. So yeah, I'm there to work with more on the retail side. When we talk retail, we talk like ODs, MDs, stores, see how we can get our product out there. And then I also look after some of the bigger accounts in the countries, some of our competitors that also we supply them lenses because we're very good at specialty lenses. So we make a lot of that as well. So I look after that portfolio. So I'm sort of a jack of all trades within the company. Where they need me, I go. I sometimes go to Latin America. I was just in Mexico last week working on a project. So that's what my role is at the moment. So and I've been with the company for close to about 15 years.
15 years. You mentioned a little bit about sales, about retail, and on that topic, when you and I connected recently to discuss the podcast, we were discussing some of the challenges and opportunities, mostly in the optical space. And the topic that kept coming up was second pair sales. And as practices look for new ways to be profitable, I think sometimes doctors focus on the shiny new objects like new technology and specialty care. And these are all great options, but sometimes an attempt to be innovative or cutting edge, in that process, we neglect strategies that could potentially add significant value to patients in the bottom line without costing a lot of money. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the strategy of improving multiple pair sales. And I'm going to lead with a bold claim, but not a promise. So don't send attorneys after me. Just a bold claim. We're going to share some ideas today that could potentially put you on a path of potentially doubling your current multiple pair sales. And let's say your multiple pair sales are 10%. What if I told you that there were practices out there doing double that? I don't want to quote any specific numbers, but I want to lean into a little bit about what they're doing differently and what can we learn from that. So to start out, let's just move into second pair sales. Can you explain why second pair sales are crucial for the profitability and overall success of independent care practices?
Okay, so when we started, Younger's roots are polarized. So that we put new polar was one of the first polarized lenses out there. We talked new second pairs and everybody talked it. So over the years, it sort of became an afterthought because now with the event of freeform, all this other new technology, and everybody's trying to cram all the best technology in the first pair. So second pair sort of became by the wayside. And what's happened now is what we see is sunwear is still a big part of what people wear. If you go, there's still about 85% of people wear sunwear of some sort, at either plano or RX, or maybe a pair of contacts with a sunwear on it. But we've sort of lost the art of talking about sunwear, even though it's still a very prevalent part of the market. So planos and regular sunwear, we all know the brands that are out there. People want them, but we forgot to talk about RX. And also the technology has not stagnated. I mean, there's so much more availability with regards to RX sunwear, and with the advent of freeform, with regards to progressives, flat tops, multifocals, there's such a big variety now, AR, that we can pretty much give a patient what they need in RX than what they want in plano. But we forgot to talk about it. So in the dispensaries, I've been to, and a lot of this is by talking to people. We all try to do the first pair, give them everything, all the bells and whistles, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But when somebody goes in the car, or they're outdoors on a boat, or they fish, or whatever they do, they usually grab a pair of sunwear. And that's where certain photochromic lenses, there's nothing wrong with them. They have certain limitations. And we lost that art to talk about it. And it's not very difficult to do. We just need to focus on it again. And at Younger, we saw that we lost, part of it is we maybe lost, we also dropped our eyes a little bit off the ball. And we really invigorating it now by starting to talk about second pairs again. And it's also, everybody's asking, how can we generate revenue? And here you can have, there's a medical application. You're not trying to sell somebody that's not, they don't need. So there's a very good medical explanation for the patient on why he should wear sunwear. And I mean, if we have been in the industry for a while, we know what that means. UV protection, all that information is there. I mean, when we go out in the sun, we wear a hat, we put sunscreen on, but we don't necessarily think about our eyes like that. And we got to talk about that again. And so I think not just from a revenue stream, there's a big benefit, but also for the patient. Most patients that go into polarized or lenses or second pairs usually won't go back. It's usually they would stick with it. It's very rare that somebody will say, no, sorry, I don't want it, I'll take it back. So I think we got to match the clinical with the commercial side of it. And that's the touch points we can maybe talk about today, which you can do it very subtle without doing a hard sell. I know as independents, we try not to force things down people's throats. And I don't like it either. And there's a good way of doing it. And that's something we can talk about today. But there's definitely, I think as independents especially, we've lost the art of how do we talk to our patients about this. Now I'm generalizing here, so I just want to make sure that there are a lot of independents that do a good job at this.
A word you continually bring up is talk, that we talk about it. And I think some practices, whether it's the doctor, whether it's the optician, goes out of their way to not give the hard sell. So that's something I would like to get into a bit more, is how do you effectively communicate this with people? But I want to focus on one specific sector of our industry, and it's a big sector.
Sure.
But I think whenever you are looking at your competition, it's important to do two things. One is to assess how can we differentiate from the competition, but also look at what they're doing right and say, what should we adopt? What are they doing? What can we learn from them? So I want to focus a minute on corporate optometry, big box in particular. You mentioned something on an earlier call we had, that they are generally much more successful in getting the second pair sale. Can you elaborate on that? And what can we learn from them so independent optometry can do a better job?
So I think they make, so it varies from group to group, but the general rule of thumb is they would talk about second pairs or sunwear at all the touch points. So for instance, when you make the call and say, I want to make or even these days, they do it online, you book your appointment, they would say, okay, bring in your RX and your sunwear plus your regular RX. So that makes the patient think, okay, I've got to bring in my sunwear. So when they arrive, they would say, okay, which lenses are you wearing? Where's your RX sunwear? That's all they ask. You're not pushing it or anything like that. They ask. And then when the testing phase goes, the pre-test, they would not mention it, but in the OD's office, they would ask, what do you wear for Sunwear? And then they would maybe mention it to a short extent is, you know what, you've got to protect your eyes from UV. You know, you spend a lot of time outdoors. When you're driving, you obviously want to make sure that you see well. You know, you want to make sure all the reflections are, so you want to have good visual acuity while you're driving. So there are certain lenses that are better at it than just what you're wearing as your day-to-day. So, you know, to that effect. And then when the handover between the OD, and the OD doesn't need to sell anything here. They're just talking about what's the best for your eyes. So, and I know, you know, my wife's an optometrist, so we have this discussion quite regularly, is that optometrists don't like to talk about product in the chair, which I understand. You're there for the clinical piece of it. But you also have to understand the patient's needs. So that's why, does he need a progressive? Does he need contacts? Does he need what, or he or she, whatever they need, you have to ask these prevalent questions. So if the OD just asks and he just triggers it, and if he says, well, I suggest you get a good pair for your first pair, whatever that may be, and look at some Sunwear, I think it will be a good idea. And then with a handover between the OD versus the dispenser, you'll say, we talked about these two things, show him around, and then they can make the call. No hard selling. So I think, you know, but as in our industry is very conservative in general, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So we try not to push things down people's throat, especially as independents. Eyeglasses are expensive. We try to walk away from it, and we judge people sometimes that walk in and say, this guy can't afford it. But I don't think it's us that have to judge. We just got to talk about it. And usually what they also do in the stores where they do very successful, they have a dedicated Sunwear section. And then they would have, you know, so they would say, these are the sunnies. And you can see, if you're going to a store, look at how many people go to the Sunwear section first before they look at RX. It's actually pretty, and that's just my personal observation. Okay, so I'm not saying this is a general rule of thumb. So, so they have a dedicated space. And then also at the dispensing table, there's usually, we have like our glare demonstrators, so it doesn't need to be ours. But there's some tools they would use to explain what polarized does. Polarized is very easy to explain. You know, you just put a, you know, we've got this little glare demonstrator. Even if you take a pair of lenses, you let them show outside, you can show the benefits of taking glare away. It's very easy to demonstrate. And then usually your hit rate won't be 100 out of 100. It just doesn't happen. The first pair is easy because they're there. The second pair is maybe, okay, do they want it or not? You can talk about it. And the hit rate, usually, if you do a good job, could be around 25%. So which, if you think about it, a store that does about 5 to 6 jobs a day, you know, 20% is another 2-3 jobs a day. You can think about it and then accumulate the revenue that can generate. A store that does about 10, it's a little less than that because of the economies of scale. So it's a very subtle way that you can talk through the whole process without letting the patient feel that you're forcing, because we still have to keep in mind there's the clinical side of it. We're there to make people see better. We want to make sure their vision is good. We want to make sure that the lenses, we supply them. Now, I'm a lens guy. I don't care about the frames. I know patients care about the frames a lot, which I understand that. But lenses' main purpose is to give you the best visual acuity for that specific job. So we've got lenses for reading, for computers. That's what I'm wearing at the moment. And we have the owner of the company, David Rips, when he started this, he used the tennis shoe example. So we don't wear shoes. We don't use a pair of tennis shoes when we go to a wedding, or maybe some people do, but tennis shoes have certain applications, flip-flops have certain applications, and then dress shoes. Glasses are no different. You know, shirts that we're wearing today, there's certain applications that we use it. And Sunwear has a very big implication because most of us drive. Most of us spend some time outdoors. But still, we don't give people an RX the opportunity to have a good pair of sunnies. And today, with the availability of RX Sunwear, is so wide that you can give pretty much somebody, even somebody in a high prescription, like a -15, you can give him a nice pair of Sunwear, because we even have it in high indexes like 174. So I think it's just from us, I think the industry is, because we don't want to push things down people's throat. especially as independents, because we see the clinical side is very important, which it is. But we can have these touch points where we can talk to people and say, these are the benefits of it is, and show them. And then if they say no, so be it. But there's a big chunk of them that will say yes. So I hope
So
that makes sense.
it absolutely does. And I believe that these multiple touch points could help avoid having to feel like you're pushing information down people's throats, which I think is what happens when we unload somebody into the optical that hasn't, nobody's talked about the value or benefits of multiple pairs. And, a lot of this discussion is focused on Sunwear, but like you mentioned, you've got a pair for computer, there's glasses for a lot of different things. So there's other options as well. So I think what you're saying is these multiple touch points perhaps shifts the expectation where people might come in, a lot of them probably thinking one pair, what does my insurance cover? But when
Yes,
you've talked about it on the phone, when you've talked about it when they check in, the doctor's mentioned it in some capacity, by the time they're getting to the optical, what I like to say is make the optician's job easier. And you're
correct.
not doing that when something has not been discussed at all, because the optician is having to start from point zero. And that's hard to do. Especially when at that point they're thinking, I'm just going to get my one pair. So there's a lot of good takeaways
Yeah,
there.
and
And go ahead.
I think the one thing, there's a slide that we use in our new policy. So we talk about what people still value with regards to the input. Now, politicians are way down in the totem pole where nobody trusts them, go figure. But optometry is still very well regarded in the medical field, where the patient goes in, let's be honest, they don't know much about Sunwear or RX, or this lingo we talk about, a patient has no clue. All they know, they can't see and they need help. So it's our job to tell the patient, these are the things that you can have. These are the tools we have to make you see better. And the ODs plays a very big role in that, because it's not just to make sure what the prescription is and make sure the eye is healthy and look for AMD and all this other stuff. But okay, the main goal is this patient cannot see well without his glasses. He wants to see better. So, and I think the ODs plays a very big part of this, and the dispenser. We've learned you can market it to the consumer as much as you want. The two critical pieces of selling, or talking about glasses, is the OD and the dispenser. So that is the gatekeepers for all lenses, I think, and that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing if we teach people. Younger as a company, we're very conservative. We focus on lenses. Lenses need to perform the way they should. But I think, and we've talked about it at length in the office, is that the two critical pieces of this puzzle is the OD and the dispenser. And if they hand it well over and they talk about it in a casual manner, just mention what is available, the patient can say, sorry, listen, I can't afford it today, but maybe next time. So be it, it's fine. I think, but we got to educate ourselves to educate the patient.
You focus on the doctor and the dispenser. Can you elaborate a little bit on their role in terms of communication? And more specifically, you've got the doctor who's generally aversive to anything that feels like selling. And you're right, a lot of them don't want to talk about product. I understand it as well, to a point. At the same time, we can look, as someone once explained to me, if you look at the optical instead of a retail environment, but more like what he called an optical pharmacy, then the products you're selling become treatments and not necessarily a
Correct.
product. But aside from that, doctors generally can be somewhat aversive in talking about products. Can you expand a little bit on the communication part? What can the doctors discuss? How should that conversation be framed? And also, what happens on the optical that destroys a second pair sale? What do opticians do right, and what do opticians do wrong?
Okay, so in the chair, what I've seen, like my optometrists that I've gone to here for quite some time, they don't know what I do and what I do for a living. So I just go there. And what's great is the way when I go into the store or the practice, they check me in and they will ask me, did you bring all your glasses with you today? And then they will ask, okay, Sunwear. And then in the chair, they will ask lifestyle questions. Do you do you have an issue with driving during the day, like driving during the night? Ask them what their profession is. For instance, somebody that drives a lot, a UPS driver, or whatever the case may be, somebody that spends a lot of time on the road, that all helps you to make that call to see, okay, if this is a good candidate. Ask them about their profession, their lifestyle, what do they do? I spend a lot of time with my kids on Saturdays at the soccer field, so that means this person spends a lot of time outdoors. That's a good person to have a conversation with. So you try to always find a link with your patient, and that varies, and that comes with just asking questions. What's your profession? What do you do for over weekends? Sometimes somebody boats, somebody golfs, whatever the case may be. And if it's related to anything to that lifestyle, you can say, well, there's certain things that are very good for what you do day to day, but you spend a lot of time with your kids outdoors. There's some clinical, there's some very good lenses out there that can help you in that situation. And that's all the EOD has to say. And then he would say, listen, we talked about these lifestyle questions, and there's like talking about blinding glare. There's certain things we can go through. We have actually a good seminar that we can help with as well, and to go into this more detail. So asking the lifestyle questions. And then it starts with the profession. What do you do for a hobby? How much time do you spend outdoors? Does glare bother you? And usually the patients would say yes, because it's true, it's a fact. And then, so that's how you find out, and then say, you know what, your first pair, I would recommend, I would consider looking at your second pair. There's some options that we can talk to you about. You can, so that's very subtle. You're not forcing it down anybody's throat, but you're actually talking about it. When you go to the doctor, they talk to you like a regular MD. If you're sick, they actually mention the prescription of the medication that you're going to get, and they tell you the pros and cons. They tell you what it's going to look like, how much you must take for it, and what. So I don't think that's any different with glasses. So when you go in there, you actually say, listen, for this application, these lenses work the best for it. Sometimes it's contacts. Sometimes it's regular lenses or photochromics or polarized. I see lenses just the same tool as dispensing, as my regular physician that I go to that gives me medication for whatever need I have. And I think if OD sees themselves like that, that's not a selling. That's just telling people, filling a need for the patient, why they're there.
And some of the things you're talking about are not necessarily product specific. So I think we have to ask ourselves as doctors, would I want to go to a doctor who, out of fear of feeling salesy, failed to mention or withheld information that I needed to help me solve a problem? And universally, the answer to that is going to be no, you wouldn't want that. I'm glad when I asked about the approach that doctors can take, and opticians as well. I'm glad you mentioned asking. You went right into questions. And I think it's so important that people do that. It's a phenomenal way to avert the feeling of selling, or that you're pushing information on people. There's a quote, I think it's Albert Einstein said it, and it goes, if I had 60 minutes to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes understanding the problem and 5 minutes solving it. And I think if people just applied that in the optical, in the exam room, where we asked more questions and did more listening, what starts to happen is you engage people in a conversation, and they start to open up about the problems. Through that, you find common ground. And in any quote unquote sales or any other scenario where we're just trying to influence behaviors or get someone to take action, you really got to find common ground with the other person and what's important to them. And any kind of a sale really doesn't start with the information you share. It starts with curiosity. It starts with building curiosity in the other person, getting them to lean in. And you do that through questions. So I'm glad you really focused on what questions I need to ask of the other person. Because then it becomes so much easier to present the information, because at that point, they don't feel like anything's being pushed on them. They actually want the information from you.
So I think the question, though, the Q&A is sort of a way that you actually getting the need from the patient. So you've not created that, but you understand the patient better. I think this is that's a human nature thing. If you listen more than you talk, you usually get the more information. And this applies to what we do. And I think, and I think in optical, we specifically need to understand that all the things we say seems as selling is a tool for somebody to see better. Either context, whatever it is. So it's not necessarily trying to sell them something. Now, there's all sorts of other, benefits of lenses, and we can talk about that. But I think if you understand what the patient's needs are in the chair, so then you can go to the dispenser and say, we had this conversation. These are the things that are important for him or her. Can you have a look and see what we have available to fit that need? And then you haven't sold him anything. You've just filled a need for this patient. And then they start wearing the RX Sunwear. It's like, I never could sit outside and read. I was squinting because I didn't have a pair of good sunglasses. All of a sudden now they can sit outside next to the pool and read a book, because there are lenses that are available for that. So I think that's where we can learn a lot. It's very nuanced. It's not difficult, but it's very nuanced. And I think a lot of it starts with questioning and understanding your patient better. And then also, we try to compartmentalize the whole practice. And I don't think it's necessarily always the case. As a patient, I go for my pre-test, they hand me over, but there's always this, it's a whole cohesive, and the stores that I've seen that do really well is that they're just very subtle with the way they approach things.
And if you think about it, most sales are a journey anyway. We don't typically just buy something because someone came along and said, "Hey, buy this." It's something that I've tried to better understand that a lot of times people don't really buy stuff because someone else told them to. They buy stuff because they've convinced themselves it's a good idea. To your point, when that process starts early, it gives people more opportunity to do that because they start thinking about their own problems. And as somebody once stated to me, people are always going to be more passionate about their problems than they are your product. And I think that's the earlier you can start that conversation and engage them and get them thinking and exploring their own reasons for wanting to do something, by the time they roll through and get to the optical, at least they're interested. Even if they're not whipping out their credit card yet, we have to at least make the optician's job easier and at least pique their curiosity, get them interested and wanting to learn more.
Yeah, I'll use a very simple analogy that I've seen before. Backup cameras in cars, before they had them, when they came out, it's like, I don't need them. That's a gimmick. I don't need them. Now think about a car without a backup camera today. I don't even look over my shoulder anymore. I just look at the backup camera. But it was something that came around. And I think that's a simple analogy, but I think with lenses, it's the same thing. And with what we do, even contacts, and it doesn't matter what you do, is if you start wearing that, somebody that started wearing Drivewear or New Polar, they rarely go back and say, I don't want a pair of sunglasses. But somebody had sat down with them and educated them and showed them the benefits of it. And they said, okay, I'll take a chance, and then they're happy, So I think, and I think this is the way if we approach it. And independence, we've got a very good, because we're very focused on the clinical side. That's a very good thing, because patients know, for the most part, for 90% of the time, patients will go to an independent doctor because they know they're going to get a very good clinical test. But where the independent lose out, they take that prescription, they go down the street and get it filled somewhere else. Because the dispensary of the independents are, there's that disconnect a little bit sometimes with it. And they can stay there. They would sometimes pay, well, in a lot of cases, will pay more for a little bit than a cheap bed down the street, because there's quality, also things that involve the service. When somebody calls, somebody actually physically picks up the phone and can help you. A lot of things that independents have to offer that, I think they sell themselves short. And that as a consumer, I mean, just try to call a big company today a bank. You have to go through a whole rigmarole of pressing zeros and ones. And me with a South African accent trying to talk to the machine drives me crazy. They've got better over the years, but at least with an independent doctors, somebody picks up the phone, can help you. Those are very good benefits you have. And people want to deal with people. As much as we focus on automation and doing all this stuff, as humans, we're inclined to deal with other humans. It's just the way we are wired. And if you get it right in your practice, you will get repeat clientele, and that's where I think as an independent, we can have a very strong voice. And that comes into all, and then give him the whole, charade of charade, but it's the wrong word. Give them the whole all the offerings that are out there. And then the patient can say, yeah, I want this, or no, or maybe next time. And maybe they come in 2 months later and say, yeah, I should have listened to you. I'll get a pair of sunnies. Who knows?
Yeah. Like I said, sometimes it's a journey, but even if you're
Yeah.
bringing these things up and at the end of the interaction that day, they still decide not to, that's hopefully still on their mind for something that they may return for later. I want to ask you about two things, two
Yes.
strategies. One is something we see a lot in, if we circle back to the big box and the corporate retailers, I want to get your thoughts on it. Uh, Discounts and heavily promoted um, second pairs and the role of discounts in that, because that's a topic that comes up a lot. And the other one you alluded to before, and I'm going to ask if you could expand
Mm.
on it a little bit. Like any good OD, I don't know nearly enough about the layout of an optical
Yeah.
and what goes where. And there's, different theories and strategies, put the women's here, put the sons there. But is there a layout that you've seen that works better for promoting second pair sales?
Yeah, I think, okay, so on the first question on pricing, so this is a very sensitive subject because, I mean, every practice runs their business different. That's not my, I want to put the caveat in there. We will never tell people we'll tell what works and then you can make the call. But usually, uh, you know, uh, the second pair has some sort of discount involved in it, or it doesn't have to be, but even just a decent price on it. The problem what I've seen with second pairs in retail, they make sure that the cost of it is within reason. Now that can vary depends on what frame it is, what lenses. So, I mean, in optics, because there's such a wide range of lenses and frames available, you can get maybe something for whatever a small amount or a bigger amount. But there's always some sort of illusion that there's some sort of promotion on the second pair. It doesn't have to run all the time, but also just say, we run our second pairs, we run a 25% discount. We know people, you don't have to even call it second pairs. You should say your additional pair. Second pair is sort of an old term which we're trying to get away from, but your Sunwear, so on your Sunwear we will talk and say there's some discounts that we can offer you. So we know, so that's a way that you can do it. So every store's got to decide how they want to do that. There's some people give a certain percentage, or they will say if you buy two of these together, we can give you a certain discount on both pairs. That's a good way to do it. So you pretty much bundle it. Those are the two most effective ways that I've seen. There's some other ways with rebates and all sorts of stuff, but it makes it very complicated. So that's a way that they can do it. So bundle it with two. Say if you buy two, we'll give you 25% off everything. I'm just using an hypothetical. It doesn't have to be 25. Or if you just want to buy the second pair, this is what we'll give you up. But that's something that the practices need to decide on their own. With regards to Sunwear, the stores, now I've been in so many, but the ones that I've seen that are flourishing with Sunwear has a dedicated Sunwear section. Somewhere in the store they have with all the brands, whatever you want to call it, what you're willing to carry, and they make sure that they have a good inventory of good Sunwear. And then make sure that Sunwear is RXable. So that if somebody puts that, there's no point in somebody putting on this huge wrap and they say, I love this, but I want to put this in my prescription. And you say, sorry, we can't do that. So make sure that the Sunwear that you have, now lenses have come a long way where we would have had wraps in the past and we'll say, no, we can't do it. Now with the technology that's out there, we can do a lot of this now. And that's where the relationship between the practice and the lab is very good. That you can talk to them and say, listen, I've got this frame. This is the guy's prescription. Can you maybe make it work? And they can say yes or no. But that's a different subject. But I think all the stores that, if you go and look at just go to any of all the chains out there, or somebody that focuses a lot on Sunwear, they would have a dedicated space and make sure they have a good selection of Sunwear. And that usually makes a big difference. And then if you look at it, and now this is not an exact science, we didn't do a study of that. This is just us observing and talking to our customers. Usually when you have a good Sunwear section, that's also a draw, because people like people go and look at Sunwear because they wear them. 85% of the adult population in this country wears Sunwear of some sort. But we only RX a very, very, very small part of that. So there's a lot of potential for us to grow that. So that's the best one that I've seen so far is a dedicated Sunwear section that will be somewhere in your store. It doesn't, and make it look pretty, sort of, because it's fashion. I think Sunwear and glasses in general, I mean, there's a fashion piece of it as well. So people want to look nice. I mean, so that's what we've seen work in the past.
So we've talked about the questions you could ask and talked about how we find common ground with people's problems. I mentioned the Einstein quote where,
Yeah.
not to be taken literally, but spending more time understanding the problem, and then the solution becomes easier because at that point you've drawn them in. But at some point you do talk about the solution. We talk
Yes.
about the technical side. I think where sometimes I'm not gonna isolate doctors, I'm not gonna isolate opticians, but just anybody in a role where they're trying to either sell someone something or get them to take an action sometimes hyper focuses on the technical stuff, and when
Yeah.
you really look at research around sales, that can actually push people away if you
Mm.
haven't identified the problem first. That being said, now it's time to talk about the product. Can you speak to that, on how important it is that that independent practices familiarize themselves with various lens options and specialty lenses when it comes to promoting second pairs? And maybe this is an area where Younger Optics has worked with other doctors or dispensers in this capacity.
Yeah. So, I mean, now the patient sits in front of you, you have all the information. What do we do? So, okay, we got the first pair. So the patient is maybe just a single vision with an AR. They don't need anything special. That's the easy ones. Now then you can talk to them about Sunwear. And usually we've got tools, great tools at Younger where we can help you. After this, if they can get hold of us, we can send them a glare demonstrator, which is a very simple tool. You set it next to you on your dispensary, and you take the lens, you put it in front, and it's got a little picture, and it shows the before and after, how polarized works. You don't need to explain the whole detail. You say, these are very good for Sunwear. Sunwear is very good for driving, for all sorts of other outdoor activities, and this is the reason why. Polarized lenses removes all the glare that distorts your vision. And then you show them, and this is what these lenses do. Patients don't really, it's like a car, you don't really want to know what happens under the hood. You just know you turn the ignition and it goes and it does what it's supposed to do. And I think for a lot of patients, that's the same thing. Like transitions, for instance, with photochromics, we have this option where your day-to-day, when you go outside, it gets darker, and it will help you in that transition phase. But when you get in a car, you need something that's polarized because it takes away all the glare and you can see other things better. And there's certain colors that are better because it brings out the reds and the greens. You want to make sure you can see as acutely as possible because it's a safety issue. If you can see, a lot of accidents happen. When Younger started doing the whole polarized things, we got David Rips, the president there. He got these little snippets from newspapers. Now, we're talking many years ago, from people that said they couldn't see, because of glare or other vehicles. So part of it is not just, these days, cell phones are a distraction, but so Sunwear will have that. And then we also have specialty lenses. We still, we talked about flat tops and 7x28s and all that. That's going to go away with the advent of freeform. Are they still here? So there's a lot of specialty lenses that are out there that can slab off. There's a lot of things that are still around. People that have very high prescriptions. You get somebody I saw a lens the other day, a 174, the patient's a -21. So I mean, he cannot function without his glasses, and they've made him a really beautiful pair of as thin as possible 174 lenses, and it's the first time this patient has actually worn glasses that has gone, that's thinner than, he didn't look like a set of Coke bottle bottoms that he's had on his face. So these are all these benefits we have. We have all these materials now, 174, 167. We've got Trivex. And then they're available in so many different materials. You can get them in polarized, non-polarized transitions. There's so many options. So as an ECP, as the dispenser, you got to educate yourself as much as you possibly can to understand the lenses that are out there. Now, it's impossible to get all of them, but there are certain things that you can do. And it was really amazing. This was actually in Mexico where I saw this lens. It was a -21. And it was a beautiful pair of lenses that they made for this person. And I had the privilege when they dispensed it in the store, I was there. And I couldn't, my Spanish is pretty limited, but you could see the patient lighting up, that for the first time, the thing is not falling off his face, it's light, and he could see well. So, and I think you see these videos sometimes of kids on LinkedIn, where they put glasses on them for the first time and they can see their parents, and I think as adults as well, if you give them something decent, it makes a difference.
I think it's oh, necessary to build trust as well. And I think that's something
Correct.
that probably certainly doctors, but opticians, dispensers as well, making sure that you're constantly educating yourself on the options that are out there, but also the ability to communicate it to the patient in a way that they understand. Because once you start getting into quoting things like 1.74, 1.67, Trivex slab off,
They
you're just
don't.
going to lose the consumer because
Yes.
it's confusing. If we confuse people, they're not going to buy. People will always
Yeah.
default to things that they understand. So you
Correct.
mentioned I think it was the kid with the minus 21 prescription, right? Instead of using a lot of technical terms, just asking them, would you like a pair of glasses that are lighter, that don't fall off your face? I mean, that's
Yeah.
going to draw someone in, but the ability to understand not all, but a lot of the different options that are out there and be able to talk to the patient about that, I think builds a lot of trust, which is
Yes.
important. So, especially in a retail environment where there's going to be a little bit of skepticism at least. And I know
Correct.
people might trust their doctor and might trust an optician more than, a politician. I'll use your
Yeah.
example. However, there's still, I think, an element of some skepticism when people walk into an optical
Correct.
that they're being upsold, that do I really need this extra feature? So I think the ability, to communicate these, to understand these options, but communicate them into the patient in a way that they understand it, builds a certain level of trust.
Correct. I think there are a lot of things we pay extra for if we look at it in our own life until we understand it. And like I said, I think the patient doesn't necessarily have to understand the critical, the details of it, but you can say these lenses will make it lighter. This is what it's going to do, and this is the end result. It's going to be like polarized. You can do this. This is what it does very well. So I think that helps the patient. And, like photochromics or polarized, patients sometimes have never heard those terms. They don't know what we're talking about. So if you use a term, these are lenses that they get darker in the sun. And when you go back indoors, they become clear. And these are the benefits they have. They help you with UV and all the clinical benefits. And then polarized, you talk about that. If it's somebody that has a special need with lenses, these are the lenses that are, especially somebody with a high prescription, there are options out there where we can make them look cosmetically a lot better for you, and more convenient, and it's lighter.
Right. Keep it simple. Keep it
Yeah,
simple.
I think so. I always look at when I'm in somebody else's shoes, as if I go to buy something and somebody wants to tell me all the day, like I had to replace my pool pump, and the guy talked all this. I said to him, man, I just want a pool pump, one that saves me money. And then he explained a little bit of in layman's terms, and I bought a pool pump.
Mhm.
So, and I know pool pumps are not glasses, but I think the principle is the same, where we try to keep it as simple as possible. What we've talked about today is not new. We've done this for many years. I think we just lost our art of doing that. And we said the second pair is more, you got to talk about it. The first pair is easy because the patient's already there. So you just got to figure out what the patient wants, what his needs are. And the second pair is something that you need to talk about. And then you got to understand as well that sometimes the patient will say no, and that's okay. He doesn't always have to say yes. I think it's and I think as human nature, we don't like the rejection. I think it's just the way we are as humans. But if we understand from that person's perspective, at this stage, maybe they don't have the funds, or maybe they'll have it later on, but at least they know.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and if we set it in that mindset and we keep it very low key, don't force it down people's throats, you'll see success. We've seen it over and over. This is not something that we've just started and trying to talk to people about. We've seen success stories and heard success stories numerous times.
I've heard a lot of practices that are successful with second pair sales tell me that a lot of times what they hear from their patient is, I wish my last doctor would have recommended this or prescribed this. And
Yeah.
they didn't, and they would have bought that second pair or that technology or that lens. Johann, can you Well, first of all, as we close out here, I just want to thank you so much for
Sure,
sharing
no
on
problem.
this topic. Really important topic. Again, I think sometimes we, as doctors, kind of gravitate, especially these days, toward the shiny new object that's out there, which is great. I'm glad there's new things coming along in terms of products and technology, but I think sometimes we have to bring it back to the basics and not lose sight of the strategies that we can implement that both help the patient and help the practice as well. But can you tell us a little bit more? I'm going to open the floor to talk about the
Sure.
company, Younger Optics, your product lines. What resources do you have for doctors, and how can people find out more about your
Okay.
company?
So Younger, a lot of people on retail don't know us. The company is about 70 years old, privately owned. So two partners, David Rips, Tom Balch, maybe a lot of people won't know them. The benefit we have is we don't report to shareholders. We do what we do best, and we care about lenses. We've grown from a very small company that started in a garage in LA. The name came from David Rips's dad, Irving. He wanted the seamless bifocal for now. We're going a lot of way. The younger crew probably won't even know about it, but it was a bifocal without a line because they wanted to make people see younger. So hence the name Younger Optics. So we still sell those, by the way. The seamless bifocal is still on the shelf. We still sell them. They're still there. And we sell a pretty decent number of them as well. It's pretty funny. But so we've a specialty lens manufacturer. So our claim to fame is New Polar. We put polarized lenses on the market. When we started it, it was like 0%, nothing. We competed against tinted lenses. So and then we grew the polarized segment to about where it is, about 10% now, but it's stagnated. Now, what we've done with polarized, which is our heart, this is where we see that's what makes us happy. And then there's another lens which I didn't mention called Drivewear, which combines photochromics and polarized for the driving test, but that's a whole different discussion. So we've expanded the polarized line in such a way that you can get it in any material. You get it in flat tops, 7x28s, 35s. It's available in so many things, mirrors. If you need information, they can go to our website, youngeroptics.com. Very easy to go through it, and they can see all the things we have. We also sell outside of the Essilor family, we sell the most transitions worldwide. So transitions, so we are a big partner with on the transition side. So we sell a lot of transitions, polarized. So we focus on specialty product. So we have a lot of very small other lenses that are used for very specific applications. But so Younger is a privately owned lens caster. We don't own labs. We don't own retail, so we don't compete with our customers. The owners of the company are very adamant that they do not want to compete with their customers, and we stuck to our guns through all these years, and we're flourishing. And our heart, and so with all the consolidation that's happened in the industry, Younger still flourishes. So, and the way we do it is we focus on specialty stuff. Now, how do we do on the retail side? And for us, retail mean the ODs. I should actually say the practices. We actually have a team called Ignite, where they can Ignite team, which we started to expand, which calls on doctors' offices. They can do trainings. We can offer seminars in regional areas. We also have a lot of tools. Now, we've got the Glare demonstrator, and it's free for the IDOC group. They don't have to pay for it. As long as we just, if, I don't know, we can maybe at the end of we can put my email address in there. They can email me, and we'll make sure they get some of the, some of the POP material. So the Glare demonstrator is the best way to show people on how to use polarized lenses. So that's our heart and soul is lenses. So a lot of companies have sort of branded out with brands and all that. So our brands are not, with the exception of maybe New Polar, are not that well known because we care about the lens side of it. So, we do well even in all these challenging times. We actually, and I think second pair is still, even with all the new technology out there, if you combine the new technology in freeform with what you can offer people in second pairs, that's a win-win. So there's so much. I think when I started in optics, that's a long time ago, it was basically glass, and then plastic just started, like 150. And if you see what is available now for the OD, I think it's mind-boggling of what's available to the patients now. So I hope that makes sense. But it's younger. We appreciate everything. That there's a lot of people out there that use our product. We appreciate it. We don't take it for granted, you know. So, and it's a US based company. So, and we manufacture our lenses in Mexico. Some of it still a little bit in California, but we try to stay true to our roots, which is a North American company.
Every cool business starts out of a garage in California. So you've
Yes.
got that going for you.
Yeah, and we've got some stories to tell. It's a family. I mean, you know, most people at Younger have been there for a long time. You know, so we don't have people stick around for a long time. It's a big company. We've got a lot of resources, but the roots of the company is still very family orientated. You know, we care about our customers. We have this motto, actually, the easiest company to do business with. And that's what we stand by. So, and we really, when we launch a new lens, it needs to do what it says it's going to do. So you won't get a lot of new products out of us, you know, but when we do launch something, it's something tangible that does make a difference.
Well, Johann, you did great. You said this was your first podcast, so you did fantastic. Anything you want to send me, email or links or anything, I'm happy to put in the show notes. So for anyone
Sure.
listening, you can check the show notes and that'll be in there. So thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate your time
No, I
today.
appreciate it. It was fun to do this, and hopefully somebody's learned. You know, like I said, we didn't reinvent the wheel today. We're just trying to push it a little forward. But it was a wonderful chatting to you.
Yes, likewise, and thanks so much. And I have no doubt that, yeah, you're right, not reinventing the wheel, but sometimes people need to hear things that are effective. And I hope some people heard some things that they can apply to their own practice to improve their we'll call them multiple pair sales, not
Yeah.
second pair sales. So
Yeah,
thanks
so
again,
if they
Johan.
can reach out to me and we can see whoever listens to this, they can reach out to me via email. I'll try to get them in touch with somebody on the ground. They can do a test and we will give them the POP and we can go in a bit more depth in the stores on what they would need. So, you know, we try to, for us, we think the education part is very important. And like I said, for us, the golden rule is that the OD and the dispenser and that link between the two of you. So I think that's for us is critical. You can advertise as much as you want, but if the OD and the dispenser doesn't understand the product that they dispense or talk about, then that doesn't make any sense to us.
Yeah, love that. Love that. So thanks again, Johan. I'm going to close out here and thank you, Johan. Thanks everyone for listening. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast wherever you're listening. Leave a review and share it with your friends and colleagues. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And to learn more about iDoc, you can visit our website at idoc.net. That's idoc.net. And check out the links in our show notes for some helpful resources for your practice. So see you next time and keep dreaming big.